You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the May 9th, 2023 meeting of the Long Beach Budget and Finance Committee. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Well, he's got one copy sitting here. He just dropped this on the table 15 minutes ago. Well, that's one copy. Yeah, we can talk about some detail to go through this. Let's pop in the agenda. You know, on through some of that paper. The hope was that we were going to get that information ahead of these meetings, but I got a lot of dash hopes in my career. We don't have any representatives from the clerk's office. There isn't much we can do with the first volume of the 2023 budget without those individuals. So I guess we'll move down to unfinished business. Cash management, it sounded like we heard last night that we still have not made any progress on that front. I'm understanding that we're still working on the changeover on accounting from, or rather the upgrades to the civic system. And once that happens, hopefully sometime in the future, we can get this cash management put to bed.
John, and that there was a comment made last night about the consideration of a new bank relationship. I don't know where that is. That's the person.
I can kind of elaborate on that some. So probably about 6 weeks ago, I had found out information from the town of Chesterton that they had made a change in their financial institution that they were utilizing to capitalize on some greater interest rates that they were not currently getting from their current financial institution. So I had put that in an email to the town council and the clerk's office just as a suggestion only to maybe move things along with Horizon Bank. My original recommendation, and I would like to recommend again today to this committee, is maybe to move this along, that we assign 2 council members to a subcommittee and meet with Karen Paul and the Horizon Bank officials to maybe get this moving sooner than later. My fear is otherwise, if we don't have council involved, that this is not going to happen anytime soon. And as John Coker stated last night, we are losing literally thousands of dollars every month that we could be gaining in additional interest. And I think we're just going to have to take substantial steps to assist in moving some of these funds with Horizon Bank. That's just my opinion. So.
What's the bank, Mark, in Chesterton that we're talking to?
I believe it was Centeer is the bank that they have utilized. Now, again, I'm not recommending that we switch from Horizon. I just think we need to meet with Horizon, get this accomplished. I have personally talked to Karen Paul in the past. It's as simple as us reaching out to her. I know we can just make a few changes and this can happen and the funds will still be there for utilization. I just think we're getting excuses on why we're not investing the money. And maybe Mr. Johnson, with your banking, history in that, you were part of that committee, meeting with Horizon Bank officials, we can move this a step closer to finish line.
Yeah, my only issue, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm not returning until the 22nd, so I'm not sure how that will impact accelerating this.
My conversations with Helen a couple of days back were that she thinks that a civic upgrade is imminent. I hope that's the case. If that's the case, and we're 2 away from being able to do it, then we'll see how to do it better. Again, we're sitting here May 9th. The chances of this all being put together between now and the time you get back are probably remote.
Well, I'm happy to do whatever.
Yeah, why don't we see what she comes up with in the next week or so? I'll email you and let you know whatever that develops into. If she gets it quick enough, I think I'm kind of I get Mark's point because we negotiate rates and we can get a little help from the Horizon even if we don't use somebody else. But maybe a little quick meeting with that other bank. I think that's the individual we talked to about.
But they decided not to bid on our financing package, whereas First Merchants did. I don't know if we want to give that a consideration. Again, it's slow the process down. Okay. But they're the ones that stepped up and did the financing for us, and maybe we can get something. Yeah, right. Just some kind of hope. Just as a gesture back at it.
I got you. Right, that's reasonable. So to keep that moving forward, then I'm gonna, keep in contact with the clerk's office, and we will have a better feel for what that upgrade is going, and then we can move that process forward. I agree with you, Mark, we do need to have our involvement at a minimum, the budget and finance guys. And right now that there's a couple of council members on here, so I think that's important. Lakeshore Drive Sewer Project. Okay, well, that's just a placeholder as everybody's aware of the situations. CCMG, we're moving that along. That was awarded. They want to do the work between now and the end of May, before Memorial Day weekend. I talked to the contractor a couple of days back, and Mark, I don't know if I shared it with you, he did, I think I did, his schedule is a little bit. I think they were going to be trying to be in there around the 20th. I think we did yeah. So they still plan on that. Hopefully that's the case. I told them that worst comes to the worst. I mean, early June's not that bad. I mean, hopefully we can get it done.
No, I agree. I believe this week Tom plans on reaching out to them once we make a decision on the additional paving outside of CCMG contract. So I believe we're still in schedule.
We can talk about that right now if you want. I just, Tim just dropped this 40 pages or 40 pages of financial information on the table here about 20 minutes ago. As I come through this, it looks to me like the NVH and the highway funds are adequate to support that 60,000 that we talked about. So I would recommend to the council. Well, actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, the council was of mind to go ahead with this if the budget and finance guys felt like we had enough in the accounts. That your does. Yeah. So that being said, and I think we're in a position to go ahead and tell the contractor that we want to go ahead with all.
Just to recap that, then that'll be the alley in between Oriole and Belle Plaine, which is on Floral. Then it would be the alley that is off Hazeltine Drive, just off of Lakeshore Drive, that runs at the dead end. The dead end alley off of Chesterton Drive, just north of Oakenwall. And then Lakeshore Drive, specifically the south side of the shoulder, just west of stop 24. And then also the tennis court area directly across the street where we removed a large planter last year. And then obviously, as we all know, we will now be needing that additional parking in front of the tennis court area. So the plan there would be to have that area repaved, and then we would stripe it probably in the next several months as well, once we get a parking configuration there. All in is $61,497.50, but we had set a not to exceed of $70,000 in case there were any overruns.
Just for informational purposes for everybody. So there's 40, as I look through these balances, Lauren, I will look through them in a minute ago. There's $40,000 for paving in there with 40,000 left in budget. So between that and the other funds that seem to have adequate balances, I think we're in good shape on financing that 60. So are you going to let, between you and Tom or somebody, let Miles know what's going on? Okay. The sooner the better on that because they schedule issues for that. Yeah. Capital plan. So the capital plan update, I know you've been working on gathering some, primary information for that process. Maybe we hold off on scheduling exactly how we're doing that until we have more conversation later in the meeting, but I don't know that there's any other department heads you're worried about getting hold of right now.
No, I mean, currently a large amount of the bigger capital expenditures, like the new truck for the street department, we have held off on that for now. We haven't moved any of the major projects forward currently. Been working with the community center committee. They're getting quotes for some of the heat pump upgrades as well over there. So we'll have some more updated numbers once we meet maybe in June.
Yeah, I think June is our target.
Yeah, it's just not only numbers for items, but it's also the timing, because really what we're doing this capital plan update is for the 2024 budgeting process. What we anticipate is going to come up for approval to to spend or buy. And that's really the key, is to have the division heads or department heads to look at the timing of where we are in the 5-year capital plan. I'm not so concerned about 25, 26, 27, et cetera, but 24 is key in what is coming up in 24.
So I think we'll task ourselves maybe at our next meeting with digesting that and putting a plan.
Yeah. and the timing.
And if we do that, maybe we do a working group ahead of the public meeting.
Yeah, and I think me and Carl should be involved in that too.
I agree.
Yeah, especially as it relates to the debt servicing side.
Public Works, Lakeshore Drive Water Improvement Project. Last time I talked to Greg, he was still waiting on some more materials. I think that's the case.
That is correct. He hopes to have those in the next 30 to 45 days.
Okay, and then the intent was to start the bid process once
We would go before the council and I'm seeking permission to do so, yes.
17, 18, council authorized the final engineering on that, and we're going to have a bid date from Haas. I think the intent, if I recall, and some of the bids get jumbled after a while, but I think the intent was to have that bid sometime maybe in June, with the intent that the project would go forward, I believe, in the fall.
This is all completion earlier in 2024.
So we have to see what the bids come in at in terms of dollars and cents, and then we'll be able to make it, the council will be able to make a decision on whether we proceed with that project. Stop anyone shore protection. This was discussed at nauseam last night. Essentially, what we have there is, so there's a little bit of controversy over how much money is available for the negotiation with the property owners of Stop 29. The last conversation or the last email thread that went through, the clerk's office felt that we only had 20,000 or so. I'm of the opinion that there's another 27 or so that they allocated from that account that should not have been allocated from that account. So at a minimum, I think we have about 47,000. You know, whether you consider it in the fund currently or whether you consider it as it should be in the fund currently. So shortly, my understanding is Witter's going to have that invoice in the hands of the homeowners over there. So that negotiation is going to happen both. And I've said this before, I need to kind of have a feel for what we have available for negotiation for that. As I'm my position right now is I think we have about at least 47 or 50 or so. And originally we were talking about an $80,000 to $100,000 commitment. So we need to kind of have that discussion at some point with some council members and so that I understand what I can work in negotiations.
So John, where do we think that additional $27,000 is today?
I'm just assuming it was, so I shouldn't say assume. What they did was they pulled another invoice out for work at Stop 21, which was in my mind, stair and not beautification, but I'm not going to call it parking. Essentially, it was stop work that wasn't related to the actual shoulders. It was beautification is the one word. If you've been out there in 21, you see the platforms and the stairs and the area and
Yeah, I'm just concerned about, excuse me, about the comment that we made about it should be 47,000, so there's $27,000 sitting in somewhere. Where is it?
currently residing in the ourselves.
Okay, so,
But here's my point. I need to be empowered one way or the other. If we're only going to say we've only got 20, I'm going with that negotiation. I can tell you right now something.
I appreciate all that. It makes me nervous, John, just to know that there's $27,000 potentially floating around. We don't know where it is. Or is that a mistake on my part?
Well, we say we don't know where it is. Essentially what happened was there was an invoice that should have gone to an account that was more broad instead of the low bond from the shore protection. So much has happened in prior times that I'm aware of, wondering arbitrary allocations into accounts made by the clerk's office rather than somebody that's involved in the process being involved in the choice of which account to pull those funds from. We're trying to solve that with this voucher program that we kind of implemented last year to maybe stay these timelines. And this actually goes all the way back.
Okay.
I'm not interested in it. Originally, I wanted to reconcile that out, appropriate it out and put it in the right place. So I'm not so much interested in that right now because I'm not sure tether in terms of time frame. I just want to make sure that I can win the negotiation with the owner.
Yeah, I get you.
When will we get to see the invoice? I'm curious, is we're gonna break it up between the town and Portland, or is it gonna call it together as one piece?
Essentially, it's going to the property owners up there, and then we will negotiate how much we're going to contribute to that overall.
But but I'm just saying, are they delineating the stairs and anything else that's on the town property? Is that how it's going to be broken out?
Well, essentially, yeah, there will be, again, this is part of the negotiation. Obviously, they would like to have the town pay more, and obviously we would like to pay less. So in terms of the nitty-gritty down in the weeds detail, that's not really part of what we know now until we can have a negotiation. But once we get the negotiation complete with the property owners, then I'll be able to tell the town precisely. It's a little right now. I'm just apologize. That's as best as I can do. Fire truck financing, we kind of mentioned this last night. I think it's probably a good idea for the administration that made the purchase decision to make the financing decision. And by that, I mean, sometime between now and the end of 2023, I think that this group and the council should make a decision about how we're going to pay for that truck. So if we want to wait a little longer to see if the rates come down, I guess that's fine. But I would hope that we could have the financing in place before the end of the calendar year. That's my personal thought. I don't know.
Well, I think we need it now, only from the standpoint of it's into the capital plan and it's into the debt servicing. So if we don't know what the interest rate costs, give it a capital plan update, then we're not going to be able to figure the debt servicing out on it. So I think it needs to be done now.
I agree. Okay. I agree. Okay, so I think part of that we want to test we have for ourselves in the coming few months. It's been on this as a placeholder essentially on the agenda. Budget working group, we've had this discussion before. There was a little bit of back and forth at the last budget finance meeting, but I think it's important that we have, some of us get together and do some of the nitty-gritty work rather than doing it all in a public meeting because these kind of wax on and it's going. But do we want to try to do that at the June meeting potentially? Have another little working session? Okay, if everybody's okay with that.
Can I have a question? If I want to go and just, I don't have to participate, but just to sit through the meeting.
Oh, I don't have a problem at all.
Is that a problem?
We can't have more than 2 council members, otherwise it's got to be a public meeting. And I would prefer that it's not, only because it's all up to get work done when you got this committee. I think in my mind is certainly going.
Yeah, I mean, it's a working committee to get to public commentary, so we're not there yet.
Yep.
Okay, so that's not a problem if I show up for the meeting. Okay.
And not for me.
Me either.
Park board funding and goal line reconciliation. I believe the park board funding issue is addressed. I think we made that appropriation already, so this can come off as far as I'm concerned. And then the goal line reconciliation, we already talked about that. I'm not so much interested in that happening anymore, so I'll pull that line item. I guess I would wish it had happened, but that's okay. Civic contractor club, we already talked about that, and that was talked about last night. And I will continue to question the clerk's office about whether or not that's accomplished. Any other questions on that? We can bring that up. Cash and asset accounting, again, we kind of beat that horse already. Late payments. This was on last month's agenda, and I want to keep it on there again because we continue to have, and actually there's the next item in the new business is also related to this item, and that is that we continue to have vendors who are not being paid on time, or in some cases not being paid at all. For me, this is a serious issue. Obviously, we don't have anybody here that can help us address this, but I think that this, as far as I'm concerned, this committee should go on record as this is a problem that needs to be. And I guess we would have that in some
John, we got Trista with us from the senator's office. I'd like to ask her a question. Trista, on our late payments, past due notices, in fact, we have one with our Cargill salt supplier. It's past due since December of 2022. What does that do to us under an audit with the State Board of Accounts as far as our late payment processing that's being conducted?
Well, when State Board comes in to do the audit, they first check things at a high level. Fund balances, are there any negatives? Are payroll totals matching what is allowed in the salary ordinance? Those kind of higher level checks. From there, then, they will pull samples or tests of various processes within the clerk's office. So, for example, then to your question, they will pull a sampling of claims that have been approved by the council to be paid and the corresponding invoices with the corresponding payments. They'll check the dates. If it's something like the Cargill salt, They may note the fact that it was late. It may garner an audit comment. It may then require a response from the clerk's office as to what the corrective action will be going forward to make sure that bills are paid on time pursuant to the internal control process. Depending on how many late payments are discovered in those test polls and those samples, they may expand to pull additional samples to see how much of a consistent problem it is versus just the fact that one or two that they happen to pull were late. So the audit will kind of, the field reps will respond based on what they're finding. As far as it becoming a problem more toward a credit rating issue, really depends on how much the state board puts into their public written audit comments as opposed to what they simply work through with the town. There are some times that something on a smaller scale may be found, it's discussed, the town, the clerk's office says, yes, we'll fix it, here's how we'll do it, and it doesn't rise to a level of an actual audit comment. If it gets into something though, where a bill then garners interest because of a late payment, something like a credit card, and the state board does look much more closely at credit cards because they want to make sure that that kind of paying process is not subverting a budget process. They do typically pull the internal controls and the logs that are kept for a credit card, and if interest is charged to a town, that will garner an audit comment typically. The state board in their guidelines states that interest should not be something that is incurred because the bill should be paid on time. The state board also says that there are times that the clerk's office, or if it's a department head who has turned in a bill late, causing the problem, that person would have to pay that interest instead, because again, that's not something the town is to budget for because it shouldn't be happening. So it's a little hard to say exactly the level of, I guess the level of response the state board will give, or the level of investigation. Kind of depends what they find. But it's a scale, a slide, if you will. Eventually, if there are enough comments of that nature, that's when S&P, in doing a rating, would become concerned and use that as one of their qualifying factors in determining what the rating should be.
Very good, thank you.
So in terms of an action plan, then I guess I'm going to personally come down in favor of some way to force or cajole or whatever we need to do to the clerk's office to make sure this stops happening. I don't know what that should entail, but personally, I have a problem with the situation. I don't know what we have the power to do, but other than just make people aware and keep down the road we're going down.
John, I would just what you're saying, action plan. When you talk about bills, you know, we all pay bills and we all have systems of doing payments. And you know, you could have a check and balance with you and your wife or your friend. What I'm just kind of curious, first of all, to start out with, what is their procedure? How does this happen? That's the first question, is what system do they have? What system are they using? And how is this falling through the cracks? It doesn't make sense.
I agree. And as far as the system, we need to query the people that are involved, which is the clerk and the deputy clerks. I don't, you know, we voted and implemented the check system that requires the town to verify checks because we got a fraudulent check go out, actually on 2 occasions in the prior 12 months. So we initiated this, I forgot what it's called, Mike. Positive pay system, so that the verification of these checks is out, so that no checks are paid by the bank without a list of checks that were written by the town to the bank, and that's a periodic thing. And for some reason, that system, we did not follow up on our end, and there were some checks that were not allowed to go through that should have gone through because the authorization process was not adequately followed. I think that's been corrected. My understanding is from Helen that that's been corrected. But these other ones, I think, are more blatant in that they are invoices that just have not been addressed. So there are apparently filing issues. I don't know. You're more welcome to ask that question at the clerk's office. But right now, I just don't know what to tell you. I'm very frustrated. So along that line, the last two items on new business, there's two items essentially, and basically they revolve around each other. We talked about this at the council last night, and again, I'm going to have Mike assist me in what I believe to be the case, and that is that we were more or less authorized, and actually I think this was authorized prior to last night's meeting, months ago, that we could use our municipal accountant meeting center to provide more assistance in terms of verification. And I know we've talked about verification of annual and quarterly, or at a minimum semi-annual, but I would prefer quarterly at this writing, verification of all the accounts and assistance with ongoing assistance. What that means to me is I would like to see center have somebody in the clerk's office every week potentially, or some periodicity, so that we have some assurance that things are getting done and potentially investigate the kind of things you're talking about, Joe. What are the systems and where are we failing in our systems, and what can we do to get better? So right now, I asked Senator Carroll to either be here or send a representative, which she did with Trista. So Trista, I guess my question to you, and certainly the rest of the panel, is welcome to jump in on this. And right after this, we're going to go into this other little sheet that has some more specific action items relative to our accounting systems. But Trista, are you in a position to be able to afford us some more coverage?
Yes. Yeah, we have several people that would be able to come over as you need, which we can discuss further. If it's weekly that you're preferring, fine. If it's twice a week, if it's, every other week, however you feel important, we can help advise on that amount of time that might be needed once we're able to see better where things are at. At a minimum, just to start on the base level, to give a quarterly review, we simply need to receive financial statements. In the last year and a half, we have not received them on a regular basis. I think we only have received them about twice. Once during the budget process back in August, and prior to that was last March. So if this cloud system progresses and gets into place, that certainly will assist, because if we're able to remote in just for review purposes, not edit at a minimum, then we can see where the financials are and be able to give you as the Budget Finance Committee and the council an updated report every quarter. If it's more than that, which I think is what you're indicating, and it does sound to us like might be a little bit of a need, is to help verify and make sure that these processes are fixed a little bit, that they're timely, and that would require a person there. We have an associate who would be even more available than myself. Could be available as well. So we've got several options. Can certainly fit it into our schedules here without any troubles, and provide to you as a town what you need to get things, I guess, a little bit better shape. I don't want to use too negative of language, but you've mentioned about these late bills already, and so there are some things obviously that need to be addressed. We're in a position to do that. I know there was a comment last night wondering about Carl's qualifications. He's been a CPA for more years than I can even know for sure. He did that right out of college and has been a CPA since. So without guessing at his age, he's got plenty of experience. We have other CPAs in the office as well. And so that background is there and available, and that's what we rely on to assist all of our clients. So there shouldn't be any qualms or concerns about that.
I use a kind of a non-accounting term. I call it a deep dive, meaning I think, we'll need you in here to kind of take a look at things in general, give us an idea of where you go ahead.
Now, I just want to give some priority to one item in particular, which is on this other sheet. And my concern, came from the document that, Chief Swistick, town administrator, put out regarding some concern about our general ledger system and unreconciled differences. And so I think the very first I'd like to see is for you guys to look at our general ledger system, look at each general ledger account to see if there's an unreconciled debit or credit balance, and determine what our exposure is, if in fact we do have that exposure. And then the second part of that would be to review our general ledger process, which is who's reconciling the general ledgers, who's reviewing them, and are we actually researching any unreconciled differences and clearing them up and resolving them. And to this, I mean, I'm only concerned about it because Mark's communication. Mark, you recall that?
I do, yes, Mike.
And so it is one of the biggest concerns anybody should have with major general ledger system like we have, a lot of dollars flowing, whether or not we're actually reconciling our general ledger systems.
And like all the things that you mentioned are part of the internal control process, which the town has. And part of our review then is to make sure that that internal control process is followed, which then will answer those questions for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, last fall, when we reached out to Helen and we had asked them to pick a day that would work for her, I believe we agreed on like Wednesday was going to be a day that you guys could be on site to work with, our staff. Rather than delaying the wait to go to the cloud and allowing them access to our information, Trista, if you are on site, you would be able to retrieve the necessary information that you need from our servers, correct? While your staff is here?
Yes, we just have to be able to have a login. I believe right now, what the town pays for through Civic is for 3 people to be in the system at one time. That's a variable number based on the type of contract service that you pay to them. So as long as there was one of those 3 logins available while we're there, that's no problem at all. I believe I was maybe mentioned last night that the cloud, once that gets established, will allow for 4 people. So again, that's a contract issue with Civic, but yes, absolutely, we'd be able to log in as long as all 3 other users were not needing to be in it at that time.
And we could have that workstation available for their staff, and then they could start the process of looking at the general ledger accounts, looking at the quarterly information in that. And then also, at the same time, I would assume while you're doing this semi-audit review, you'll give us something back in writing to the council with some of your findings and recommendations moving forward.
Absolutely.
I know the cloud we talked about 2 weeks ago. Helen had asked me to have K+ ready to move everything to the cloud. That's 2 weeks ago. That's been delayed, and I'm fearful that we continue to delay this, another month will go by. So my recommendation would be if we could get them in sooner than later at a workstation here, allowing them access to our information, they can begin by June to have the reports necessary that we need for review.
And I would just add in that, Mark, that Trista, in terms of the general ledger system, if you're looking at it and you're finding that there are unreconciled differences that have been sitting out there for some period that have aged for a while, what is our debit versus credit exposure on that basis? If there is any at all, and I use the word if because I don't know for sure. But if you're looking at it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand everything you were saying. Maybe the microphone was glitchy.
Mike, maybe if you could change Mike, I think that last night we had a problem with that. Maybe Greg, one of you right or left. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My biggest concern on the general ledger system is, and again, the key word is if you have unreconciled differences, debits and credits. I don't care. You want to say something? But just 1 second. Then I'd like to know what our total exposure is on a net basis between the debits and credits.
Yes, that would be part of the review process.
Just to make a comment, I agree with everything we're talking about, but I'm sitting and thinking about the reality. One major piece of the puzzle is cooperation, and what kind of guarantee? There's no guarantee, but how do we help Senator to get that cooperation, because I don't know how willing some of the people will be to assist. And I don't know how much you can do without their help. That's a major concern that I have.
One other thing, when we talk about general ledger reconciliation, also, I feel very strongly that bank recs should be looked at and done monthly.
And they should. That is a requirement that the town should be following. Again, we are not provided copies of that, so I can't give you knowledge from our end on if that has happened or not, and if they have been reconciled properly. That also will be part of the review, though.
So I think it seems like we're all in agreement about wanting to get you in here sooner than later. And Joe, I didn't mean to brush past your comments, but I think at this point, as a council member, we've experienced so much frustration over the last 6 to 8 months that if we don't do something proactive now, we're not going to be able to hand over a fully functioning, accurate accounting system when we leave office and do the same. So I don't really care that we don't get cooperation at this point. We'll mandate it. If we have to do something legally, we'll do that. But I think we absolutely have to get Senator here to do.
And all I'm saying, John, is we should be prepared to figure out what the game plan would be if they're not getting the proper cooperation. I hate for them to be frustrated because they can't get the cooperation. That's all I'm saying is we should have a plan of attack to say, how are we going to be able to assist them to get this cooperation?
I disagree.
Yeah, I think we pick a date starting next week.
I would say if Wednesday works for Senator and, you know, unless we get some pushback from somebody else in this clerk's office, we'll just shoot for next Wednesday. And then however many individuals you need to start the process, if you need more than one individual, it's just my personal opinion, but I think if, I'm not saying we're not cognizant of costs, but I think as many people as are required to get this thing off the ground, it's important to get this thing started properly. And I think that's going to involve a little investigative work. And I agree with Joe, there could be a little pushback, but either way, I think we have to do it. What I'm going to do too, Tris, I neglected to send this to you, but I will. And this is what we're going to move to now. We don't need a lot of time on it, but Mike and I had some conversation last week and we thought we ought to have some priority items that need to be addressed by this group. And then, you know, in terms of your guys' involvement, it includes things like the cash investment program that we've been beaten to death, the deep dive by you guys, including 4 or 5 different items, updating our capital plan. Last time we did our capital plan, Carl did some projections for potentially what the revenue stream looked like for some of our big capital oriented type accounts like CCC and those kinds of things for us. So we'll need a little projection for that. Again, as Mike mentioned, the reconciliation and then quarterly and mid-year statements review. So we've got quarterly information from that office in paper form, but you got to be able to get it off the computer servers, I would imagine. And if we need help from the IT supplier, we can do that as well. We wanted to find out exactly where the civic software upgrade was at and what the firm date for the final implementation of that process is. I think, you know, clerk's office sounded as though it was imminent. I hope that's the case, but I think once you guys are in here, we ought to be able to tighten that up and figure out exactly when that's going to happen. The 2024 budget is a major concern for all of us. I think we've tasked ourselves starting that process by June, and we need to do that. I think we also might do an address.
Just that I think that we have to decide what our frequency of meeting that is going to be, and I think we talked weekly meetings to build through the month of June to build the budget for 2024.
And including some budget and finance committee members at it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the only problem we're going to have is if we have more than 2 council members at those meetings, we'll have to have a public meeting, and I'm not so sure.
I think we should limit it to 2, and which is consistent with the budget finance committee. I don't see a problem with that because whatever we come up with in that, we're obviously going to have a bit full constant as to what the budget looks like and so on and so forth. So I don't see that as a risk. You, Bob?
I'll stay. One more meeting. I agree entirely with Mike's sentiments there. The next one was the deposit pay process. Mike is of the opinion, I believe, and I'll let him address this in more detail, but potentially there should be some sort of threshold. I know the clerk's office felt like it should be all text Personally, I look at the number of checks we write on a monthly basis. I think it's something less than 100. It doesn't seem to me that that should be that cumbersome in that system, as long as we're doing it, you know, on a regular basis. But Mike, if you want to talk about that.
Well, again, I haven't done any kind of a segmentation of the checks written and the dollar amounts, so I really don't have a sense for how that volume breaks down to the 100. So if 90 checks are under a certain dollar amount and they're an exposure that we can live with, then lighten up the workload on that and really focus on what we consider to be items over a certain dollar amount rather than exposure risk. And we recently had one where we caught a fraudulent transaction and it was a sizable check. That's what we're trying to accomplish with positive pay. You know, to look at a check for $40, just adding that to the workload on a daily basis, my sense is that would make sense for us to draw it down. But again, I'm just bringing up this as something to look at. And again, I haven't done a segmentation of the 100 check you mentioned, John. How many were over a certain dollar amount, how many are over a certain dollar amount. So I don't really have, I don't know. Right.
We can investigate that and probably come up with some kind of breakpoint.
And we do write large checks. And so that's really the issue of positive pay, is to make sure that we're reducing any risk on that side, because you only have 24 hours to make a decision to pay or not pay a check. The day it's presented.
My only issue, I think, is, and I just, you know, consequently or interestingly enough, paradoxically, I guess, I just read an article in the journal this morning about, it was on the electronic version, it wasn't the print version. The level of laundering checks right now is exponentially larger this year than it's ever been before. So apparently, the bad guys, maybe they're getting kicked off the electronic side of life and going back to these old methods, but apparently it's really jumping up significantly all across the country.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So I guess my question would be, if we do have a threshold and a check that's written for $40 winds up being one of the ones that gets laundered, does that mean it slides under the radar and gets paid? That would be my only concern.
I only bring the issue of the threshold based on what our concern is for loss. Would we be concerned about $40? And if in fact, again, back to the segmentation thing, John, if we found out that 80% of 100 checks are under a certain dollar amount, do we really want to spend the administration time to look at those smaller checks, or do we really want to focus on the bigger ones?
No, I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
I just would like to know more about the process. Does a $40 check that's been laundered because we authorize that check to be paid without the positive pay because it was written, if it's written for another amount, it doesn't come back at that positive pay, and I don't believe, I think it just gets paid, and then we have to be aware enough to know that a laundered check went through. And I don't know that as they or not.
I don't know either. And the point of this is, what reports are we getting from Verizon that show this is the amount that it's been altered to, or is it the amount that we originally wrote it for? I don't know the answer.
I think that's important. So maybe, you know, let's ask ourselves, if we're going to talk to the bank anyway, maybe we talk to her a little bit, because I don't understand that system well enough to make that call.
And then we should step back and look at that. It's been a while since I've been looking at it too, but I would imagine that Verizon's got a system that says the check is being presented for a certain dollar amount. Automatically, if that doesn't match up with our registry, that's a concern. So even if we had a threshold, for example, and now a check for $40 has been written, has now been altered for $4,000 or $40,000, that should be a red flag anyway.
If they got it on our tally of checks, that's my only concern. I don't know if that fails safe, but we can find out, but we need to find out. Good. No, I think we're all in agreement that we need to review that. And the next one is the recent check bug, which follows on to what we just talked about. I don't know where the investigation is, Mark. I don't think it should be right on that. Or
Clearly, it happened outside our jurisdiction at a bank where the check was presented, so it wasn't here in LaPorte County. I can try and do some digging through the financial institutions to see if they'll provide us any information from the fraud department. Typically, in instances like this, the fraud departments within the individual banks are tasked with beginning an initial investigation as to how it was accepted. Do they have any video footage of where the check was cashed, things of that nature. But I haven't been presented with any of that. And again, like I said, it happened outside our jurisdiction. I believe somewhere down in Indianapolis, not for certain on that, so.
I can ask you, just to interrupt you just for a second, in the last check I'm talking about, $6,000 check. We need to have Verizon give us film of the front and back of that check. We have the actual paper, right?
I have a copy that was provided to us that shows
I only saw the front though. The key is the back of the check. That'll tell us where it was deposited, what bank it was deposited at, and we can go backwards in that one and kind of route through it that way. But I'm happy to assist in that, and I had a conversation with Tim last night about getting film of the front and back. So if we already have the back of those checks, and I want to look at, I'd like to look at both of them, sure, in question, then we can begin to research intuitively, where did these transactions take place? Right? Did they take place down in Indianapolis, for example? And that would lead us to, is it the post office? Is there a control system issue elsewhere? I don't know. But we need the back of the check is more important than the front of the check. We learned in the front of the check because it was altered.
I'll share with you, Mike, what I have. We may have the back of it, but I'll send that email to you to take a look at.
Yeah, but we should do both those checks. But then if there's any commonality between the two transactions, we need to know that.
I know with my personal Verizon account, all I do is go up here and I can see the front back right under here.
Then that's all we need.
I mean, I'm assuming it's the same kind of thing.
Yes. If we have that information, then we should just pull it right now and take a look at it.
And the last item then was the, I know it's going to be one of this. That the article that I read this morning, it was multiple hits on the same company. So this pattern is. Yeah. Contract with Sender, we already discussed this. I don't think there's any much else to say about that. Tristan, you're gonna hopefully have somebody here on Wednesday this coming week, and we'll see where we're at. If you need more communication from any of us, I know Mike's gonna be out of town, but I think Carl has some information, and certainly Mark will be around. If there's anything you need, kind of a springboard from Joe's comments, if there is a communication issue, then let us know as quickly as possible. We'll front load them and let them know what's coming. And we'll see what things together is.
Jen, can I bring up a question from last night's meeting? I was confused when they were talking about owning people, and it seemed like, and I could be wrong, but it seemed like the majority of the committee wanted to go to a different accounting firm. Did I misunderstand that, or there was chatter about that back and forth?
So the software product that the town utilizes over the last, and I don't even know.
Yes.
So the accounting software product that the town uses is a proprietary software that's owned apparently, and I don't know when the ownership occurred, but it's owned by Baker Tilly, which is essentially a competitor of Senders. They're another municipal accounting firm. Just by way of historical anecdote, the council decided to have them take a look at the financing package from the bonding company for the public safety building, and they came up with precisely the same conclusions the Senator did, and it wound up costing us $5,000. My personal feeling is we wouldn't change horses in midstream. I think Senator is a very reputable firm and has done great work down on the list. And again, I don't know, it's been many decades. So my personal feeling is, for now, I think we stay with Senator and we do what we need to do in these action items and some of the other things we talked about. If there's a movement afoot to investigate additional help somewhere down the road, I'm not opposed to that, but I think we need to be intelligent about how we go through that process. Secondly, the only involvement that Baker Tilly has had to date, in my understanding, is the only involvement that the council authorized was that it was okay to, in fact, I don't know if we actually authorized, clerk's office did this on. They authorized some expenditure to Baker Tilly for assisting in the upgrade of the civic software and the implementation of the cloud, which is also part of that upgrade for the accounting systems. So in my mind, that's the only task that Baker Tilly is involved with currently. And I think we leave it at that. That's my personal opinion. And I don't think there says anything about that. So
Would it be appropriate, or should there be something that this committee should make any comment in that situation?
Well, I made the same comment, I believe, last night, but I tell you what I can do. I'm gonna send a written communication, an email to the clerk's office after this meeting, letting them know with the approval and sent at the council from last night, what we decided to do with Sender's involvement. And I'll also touch on the fact that we feel like, and this is again my thought, but I think during the session here, the involvement of Baker Tilly right now is restricted to the implementation of the cloud system. And I'll put that in writing, and if anybody gets an objection to that, hopefully they'll say something, meeting the folks.
I would appreciate that. I think that I feel the same way. Thanks, John.
With that, I don't have anything else unless there's some questions.
Can the only thing that we didn't discuss, and I don't know how much you want to or don't want to, is the public safety building. Were we going to discuss any of that? Was that on the agenda?
Whatever you'd like to. I mean, we had some questions actually at the fire commission meeting this past week that were addressed. Some individuals that weren't quite up to speed asked some kind of broad questions, and we answered those. I'd be willing to answer anything you need to hear from. And then again, you mentioned something about having an education session, which I'd be more than happy to have. If you get some specific things, we can certainly talk.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, I realized, I think it was Tuesday, that they received whatever it is, the 2.84, and it's in the bank for the corporation. And I was just wondering if I know the corporate, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I know the corporation is a separate entity, and who assists them with accounting or anything else. I know that town council oversees how it works, but I was just curious, 2.8 million, and it's probably going to be there, the large part of it won't be there until the end of the year. And I'm just wondering, we've talked about it before, is it worth trying to, where's that money? Is it invested in anything in short term? So you can get some interest on that money?
Essentially, it's not earning any interest that I'm aware of right now. So there are two banks involved. The first bank is the bank that issued the bonds, and that is First Merchants, which is the bank out in Minneapolis. I believe they the only one ordered actually all made. So they issued the bonds. There's another bank involved. It's called the Trustee Bank, and that's called U.S. Bank. So that bank actually has the funds now. Right. So that bank is entrusted with the funds, and they are to be the one that helps the building corporation in payments. So there's a big formal process. There's what's called payment affidavits. So for instance, I know you asked me earlier about the town's reimbursement, which is coming for the $50,000 in May. That comes from the U.S. Bank after the affidavit that has to be authorized by either one of two individuals. Right. Either Mark or Chris. In terms of the payment so the process with the contractor, in terms of when the bills are paid, we as the town had to approve of their pay applications. And Mark and I have been on the design committee, and I think we'll continue to do that. We'll be reviewing whatever invoices are submitted to see whether or not the work that's invoiced for it has been done for those invoices. There's also lien waivers that have to be issued. So I'm very familiar with this. It was part of my life for this 30 or 40 years. And Mark is familiar as well with his work with the buildings that he was over in Michigan City, Southwest and Michigan City. So I'm fairly comfortable with the processes and the entities involved. As far as whether or not that money should gain interest, I will tell you, you misspoke just slightly. There is a considerable amount of money that the building is one of the largest expenditures. It's due for delivery in June. So there's going to be a lot of money coming out of that account. I don't know. And I see Trista has her hand up. Go ahead, Trista.
I just have one small correction for you. While U.S. Bank holds the bond proceeds, which they are right now, it is earning interest for you. If the project goes very quickly and those bills are paid very quickly, there won't be a lot of time to earn interest, but it will earn at least some while it's there. And that interest then it becomes available to you to spend on the project as you're wrapping up those final items at the end.
I don't think we have the luxury of trying to put it somewhere else to gain more interest though, right? I mean, it's got to stay.
No. Right.
And then is it technical that the US Bank is actually the trustee of the corporation. Am I correct?
That's a legal term. I'll defer to Tristan, but I believe that's what they're called. Okay.
Yeah, they're the trustee for the bond itself. It happens to be that the corporation is the entity that issued the bond on behalf and through the town. But no building corporation member is allowed, for example, to contact the trustee and ask for something to be paid differently or for money to be allotted towards something else. That all, as has been explained, all has to funnel through the process of approval through Mark and council's authorization and things. So there's many processes in place for it to be protected and then spent where it belongs.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that.
Christy, you guys are comfortable with the civic system, right?
I'm sorry?
Bartolome, you guys are comfortable with the civic system?
Yes, yes.
If that's something we hadn't heard from the clerk's office, that somehow because Major Tilly owns civic, that somehow they had some magical expertise. I don't think that's the case. I know that the clerk's office isn't crazy about the idea of anybody coming in looking over their shoulder. But frankly, I think it's a good idea to have somebody that maybe they're not as comfortable with coming in. They aren't happy with you guys. I don't know why. Somehow they like Baker Tilly. Somehow I think bringing Baker Tilly in first is going to cost us a lot of money. First up, I think they're more expensive. I don't know that for a fact. But they'd have to get all updated on exactly how we do things. I mean, we're reinventing the wheel. I do think that changing horses in the middle of the stream is a pretty good analogy, although I would say maybe we are saying changing horses in the middle of a rapids heading toward Warrenville, because I think that's maybe where we're at, but certainly fear. I guess my one question is given the fact that the clerk's office is not crazy about this idea, somebody coming in, are they going to kick and scream? Because I believe you guys are you're not a definitive body or
We're just
advisory, yeah.
As far as I
Are they going to make the argument that you guys can't do this? I don't know.
Well,
They need to make the same argument that the county council can't do this because they're a separate entity. I don't know where we're headed, but I think we need to kind of expect that given what we've seen from this clerk's office. I don't know if you guys have any ideas on how you want to deal with that when it happens, because frankly, I think we can all expect that. The other thing about positive pay is, the clerk's office needs to be paying attention to this. I did talk to Helen a few weeks ago, and she said she had it set up now with the bank where she would get texted anytime a check came in and she would authorize it. Now, for her illness, I don't know how that's going to work. And certainly if we have to rely on a clerk treasurer, we can expect it to fail. So I guess that's what I'm wondering is what you guys plan to do, particularly if the clerk's office said you guys can't authorize this.
That's a great question. I don't know what the answer is. I think we would have to talk to the town attorney and see what, if any, action we could take as the council. I don't know that this body has any power, but I would imagine with the two council, or at least there's three of us here this morning, that we would make some action to force the hand of the clerk's office. That's my personal feeling. I don't know what power we might have, but I certainly think we have to do something. Even if there's a caution involved about what we can and can't do, I don't know how we not try to implement some action at this point.
May I say something for a moment? I am always the eternal optimist, including all the reason my hair is gone. I know things will be fine at the end, but I just want to say quickly, and I know that you all in town have your daily relationships in your daily lives. Tim and I have always had a very good relationship. I'm hopeful that that continues. I don't have any reason to think that it won't. So it really is from our chair in our office in everyone's best interest to see if there are any things that need to be fixed, and if so, get them squared away and then move forward on kind of a fresh foot, I suppose, if you want to call it that. As far as who controls what, just very briefly, and Chris obviously can advise the council more directly legally, but again, from our financial advice position, a town council is entitled to know what the financial status is of the town. And so requesting financial reports and things is absolutely appropriate. As well, then, the town council is ultimately in charge of the internal control procedures and to verify that they're followed. And that's to occur in conjunction with the clerk's treasurer's office of a town, who is also part of those internal control procedures as well, and of course wants to see that they're followed. So again, I'm hopeful that our time there with you will be beneficial, and hopeful that it will be cooperative, and just get things squared away.
Appreciate your comments. We hope the same.
Thank you, Tristan.
That's all I have. If anybody has anything else. Okay. I think Tristan's the only one on there. Is there anybody else on Zoom? Yeah. Is there anybody else on? I don't see. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Oh.